Well, I just like once a day to kind of stop and think, what if everything is okay right now? What if I am okay right now? What if I don't need to be different than I am? What if this is okay right here?
Welcome to Supernormalized, the podcast where we challenge the conventional, break boundaries, and normalize the seemingly supernatural. Join me, CJ, as we explore less uncharted realms of existence and unravel the mysteries of life experience. My treasured listeners, if you have a life story or healing modality or unique knowledge that you'd love to share, reach out to me at Supernormalized, that's Supernormalized with a Z, at proton.me. Let's together embrace acceptance of the supernatural and unusual as what it really is, completely normal. Today on Supernormalized, I talk with Clementine Moss, the founding drummer of the Led Zeppelin tribute band Zepparella, an all-female band that covers all of the Led Zeppelin rock foundations, really. She's a multifaceted individual who seamlessly integrates her roles as a rock and roll musician and depth hypnosis practitioner, and has written a book, From Bonham to Buddha and Back, the Slow Enlightenment of the Hard Rock Drummer. Clementine eloquently explores in the intersection of her music career and spiritual journey. And in our discussion today, we talk about that, from how this all happened and her early times in life, and how that all influenced her towards meditation. And then finally into being in a band at the age of 27, which is a late start, but they're doing obviously really well. And if you look at some of their clips, you'll be amazed. There's just this really, really good band, and I'm sure you'll enjoy. Welcome to Supernormalized, Clementine Moss. Clementine, you're in a band and you tour around and you cover Led Zeppelin with some friends, and that must be a hell of a lot of fun. But you're also a person that gets into deep meditation and finds the truth in life through that as well. How did that all happen? That's wild.
Yeah, well, let's see. We only have an hour. It's short. It's a short description and a long description.
Okay.
So I'll do the short description. Was that when I was around 27 years old, which I know for astrology fans out there is kind of an important time. A couple of things happened. One was I went to my first 10-day Vipassana meditation retreat and had kind of a big opening experience there. And around the same time, I took my first drum lesson. At the time,
Ah,
I was living in New York City, and I had moved there to be a writer, and I was kind of floundering around quite a bit and really longing for some kind of creative output that involved other people. And I had musicians in my orbit. And so I just one day thought, I've never ever learned anything about drumming. And everything kind of fell into place. I got a great teacher, and within a year and a half, I was playing in bands. And now,
wow.
30 years later, here, that's how I make my living, as well as being a spiritual counselor for others. And so everything kind of converged in my life. I thought I was on two separate paths, contemplative path and music path. And over time, I've come to see it's just kind of all one thing. And I'm
Yeah.
learning similar lessons, being in the world and then retreating from the world and going inside. Yeah.
Did it take retreating from the world to recognize that, though?
I think so. I mean, I'm so grateful for the practice of meditation, of insight meditation, which is what Vipassana is, because, it really allows us to step back and observe our reactions. And, when I'm sitting behind the drum kit and playing a show, it's a very valuable tool to be able to see the ways that my mind gets pulled out of the moment and how my playing suffers in those moments where I'm not allowing the music to kind of flow through me.
Mm,
Much the way that, when we're living our lives, we can really have a sense that we're in a flow, and then we notice the ways that we put up these roadblocks to feeling that way. And so, I feel like we're always kind of bouncing into the flow and bouncing out of the flow. And that is very apparent sitting on a meditation mat, observing my thoughts and reactions. And it's very apparent sitting behind a drum kit as I start thinking, oh gosh, what if I mess up this next part coming up, and anticipating failure, and then, the feeling of failure after something messes up, and all of those things. And then also, the life of a musician is really grueling. I'm the driver of the band, so I'll drive 12 hours, get out of the van, set up my drums, and play a 2-hour rock show, and then break out the drums and get to the hotel room. And my ability to just kind of allow myself to be in the flow of life without stressing out too much about things like lack of sleep, or the stress of timing, or all of those things. The benefits of contemplative practice are just, there are just so many. Yeah.
yeah, for sure, for sure. I mean, it allows you to pull back from the immediate moment and your own internal panic loops around that moment if it's actually a bit stressful. I mean, I know yesterday I didn't get to meditate at all for the first time, and I really noticed it. And
Mm.
yeah, all of a sudden, traffic, phone calls, all at the same time piling on each other while I'm trying to do something. I'm like, oh no, and I totally flipped out. And my wife was like, yeah, you just relax. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Just come back to that moment, come back to the zero, and yeah, things all fall back into place. Now, I've
Yeah.
got to ask you though, because you said you went to a Vipassana retreat in New York, and that was pretty much the seed of a lot of this life that you've led. What made you want to go to that?
Um, well, I've always been always been really interested in the big stuff, the big questions. And as a child, I was such an avid reader. I studied literature in school and in college. And, it was really through literature that I started to really think about, a lot of the big questions, and was always drawn to stories of people, on journeys to find find answers in
Mm,
those kind of ways. And then when I was living in New York in my 20s, I went several times to the Zen monastery in the East Village in New York City. There's a Zen center there, and went to some of the lectures, and tried to sit in meditation. And I was reading a lot about Zen. I read a book called The Three Pillars of Zen, and that really got me excited about the idea of meditation. And then I was working in a restaurant, and a customer asked me what I had been doing, and I told him I had been going to the Zen Center, and he said, "Oh, if you're going to do, any meditation, you should start from the source and go to a Vipassana retreat." And that was kind of how it happened, which is funny because I really feel that in my life when I have a question, um, about the way to step on the path, something always kind of comes out and shows me the way to go. That happened with drumming too. I was just kind of taking, kind of trying to teach myself. I had a boyfriend at the time who was kind of showing me some things, and I just mentioned it as I was working in a restaurant, and someone said, "Oh, you're playing drums. Here's number of the best drum teacher in New York City, so it's I feel
Wow,
like being
that's
able
cool.
to open to those suggestions and then just saying, okay, well, that's showing up in my life. Let me check it out. So that's kind of how it all happened.
Excellent, excellent. I find as when I get into meditation that life as a feedback loop starts to actually feed back that sort of Zen space to me as well. Do you find that too?
Yeah, it's kind of beautiful. When I started
Yeah.
studying shamanism and shamanic practice, I really had a sense that I started recognizing that way of flowing with the world, um, and becoming even more aware of the little synchronicities and the little messages that are kind of always coming to us, and that sense of flowing with the world, I think it's like a heart opening, I think, when we get in that place. Um, and even during difficult times, I feel like the difficult times for me are when I think that, I start telling myself that there is no such thing as that flow state, or there is no such thing as those messages. The conscious critical mind comes in and tells me that I'm alone, that I'm
Oh
alone,
yeah.
that there is no help, or there is no um yeah, there is no aid, for me in the moments. Those are the times I think I suffer. Yeah.
Yeah, well, yeah, that inner critic is not very friendly and almost seems to be like a really staunch materialist atheist.
Right.
Yeah, you don't have to listen to it, really.
Yeah. I know. Well, actually, I kind of do like value it in some sense, because
Yeah.
I think it's very important to have a lot of discernment,
Mm,
with what's presented for us. I'm happy that I've never had to go down too many wrong paths, in order to in my spiritual journey, and there are quite a few that we can get caught in. And happily, I feel like I've lucked out to have great teachers and had a good feeling that kind of guided me to find those teachers. Yeah.
how does this all work with your life in Zepparella and influence your spiritual journey there? I mean, it must be interesting. Are you the only person in the band that meditates, or does everyone in a sort of Zen sort of space as well?
Yeah, everybody in the band
Wow,
has
that's cool.
really great practice. They differ. Everybody's a different and unique person, and everybody has a different idea about what it means to be in that space. But
Mm,
all of the women in my band are they're very dedicated, disciplined beings who bring a lot of joy to the world, and
mm.
so I think that they all have ways of being able to really center themselves. Yeah.
Yeah, you can see that in your clips. Like you guys are just like so tight with framing
Mm.
the music. It's just perfect, and
Oh,
like
thank
and
you.
you can tell you love what you do. That's what's like cool about it too. It's like, well, yeah, these girls love
Yeah, it's
it.
how can you not love it? It's so
Yeah,
fun. Yeah, it's
yeah,
really,
for
really
sure.
fun. Yeah.
Yeah. So, what pivotal moments or discoveries shaped your path towards enlightenment, as detailed in your memoir?
Well, like I said, in that first 10-day meditation, something happened where I had one of those kind of falling away moments, that you fall out of time.
Yeah.
Um, and, um, and, my experience of it was kind of as if I were becoming that endlessly closing and opening flower, right? That's what it kind of felt like the aliveness of all things. The was like a kind of motion that was outside of time. It's always hard to describe those things, but it was a real sense of unity with all things, and I didn't have a framework for that when that happened. I just figured that's just what happens when you meditate a lot. Um, and and yet it really did. I felt very different after that. I felt like I couldn't find some of the heaviness that I think I had been attached to, or like the emotional content of my life felt different. And it was a big test, about 6 months later, my father passed away suddenly. He was 54, and it was a shock. And as I was going through that process of my father's passing, I really kept thinking, like, what is going on? Like, I feel so peaceful about this. And really recognizing that if that had happened before the retreat, it would have been such a different experience. And I
Mm.
couldn't even really put my finger on it, but it really just did feel like it was, that it was okay,
Yeah.
that we were in that, that everything ultimately is okay. And that lasted for really, that lasted my whole life. And I have had other moments like that in my life. And I think that what that first experience was for was to set me on a path of understanding. It wasn't like, oh, okay, now I'm awakened and now this is all, that there is, and I have this, this secret information or something. It was more like it set me on a path to understand what was that. Um, and 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 for a lot of years I thought that it had been a fluke, and that I tried to talk like that. We were talking about that materialist mindset,
Yeah.
really was trying to talk me out of it, talk me into believing something about it, talking me into believing that sometimes even that it had been a mistake that I had experienced it, and that I wasn't worthy of it. Um, and over time, I realized that it was really just putting my feet on the path of trying to understand this lifetime of understanding how to live from that freedom that was in that experience,
Mm.
that light, and that sense that everything is okay. And sometimes I stop myself and just think, what if everything is okay as it is? And lately I've really been getting in touch with that feeling of that constant pushing forward that has propelled me through life, that gave me purpose and meaning in my life. And what if that energy of pushing forward just doesn't need to be here anymore? Um, feels almost destabilizing. Like I feel dizzy sometimes when I tap into that feeling of letting go of that pushing forward energy. But then I go back to that feeling that's always with me, that infinitely okay movement of total aliveness in each breath, each moment.
Mm.
And that's where I can kind of find, solace as I struggle with those things.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That touching on the infinite touches you back, and it really does change your life for sure.
You've had
Um,
those experiences too. I've listened to the
yeah,
podcast. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. When I went to the infinite light and came back, in my experience, I found that it did make everything okay, as you say. It does.
Hmm.
It makes it so life is. It's like everything just runs off your back. There's just nothing that holds on to you as much as it usually does, or it usually could. I mean, occasionally I fall down by forgetting to meditate or just getting too busy, and it's crazy that I put it aside. But when I keep my practice up, it's like everything is really just calm. It stays calm. You can hear it in your voice.
Mm-hmm.
the
Mm-hmm.
calmness that actually pervades your life. And I have that too from my meditation practice, and I think that's important for people because then you have this extra resilience that you can't explain. It's just is. Everything's
Mm.
okay, and life is cyclic. It's not always going to be like this. It's always going to change.
It always changes. Yeah, what a great lesson for
Mm,
that.
mm.
Yeah. And the purpose, I think, of all of this, navel gazing I've done in my life really is to to really come to a place where my heart is open, where I can be undefended, and that in that way, then I see everybody as, with the same open heartedness, see into everybody's potential of being in that light. I think our purpose, the purpose of all of this is to be able to be open hearted with the other. And that is kind of where all of our all of our solutions live, I think.
Mm. Yeah, yeah, for sure, for sure. It allows you to see. I personally find that it allows you to see that not only is everything okay, that even when people are having odd reactions around you, that you can actually just step back and go, "Oh, I understand where you're at, and I really do
Yeah.
understand where you're at." And
Yeah.
it's and you can
Yeah.
flail all you like, but that's just I'm just watching you flail because that's a part of the story too.
That's right. That's right. And we feel, we can feel so deeply too. I think for a lot of years I thought that all of this, the purpose of it was so that I didn't have to feel. I didn't have to feel the difficulties. I didn't have to feel the pain. I didn't have to feel the heavy emotions. I didn't have to get frustrated. I didn't have to do all of this, and at a certain point, I thought, I think that's not the point. I think I manifest here to feel fully. And I noticed that when I attach to the feeling, that's when the suffering begins. But if I just allow the feeling to move through, to witness it, to feel it fully, but not
Mhm.
to put a story on it,
Yeah.
um, I think then, that's the practice really. I'm not always great at it.
No,
But
yeah. I think we all
yeah,
waver. We can't be perfect all the time.
that's right. That's right. That's right. I've met some really amazing bodhisattvas in my life, but I know that, even they get into little contractions of conscious, of their personality.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
why we're here.
I think
That's why we're
so.
here.
Yeah, and help each
Yeah.
other through.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Hmm.
So, what are the techniques you encounter in meditation on the meditation cushion that help you when you're playing your music? I mean, sitting in that zero state must actually help you to, maybe erase that extra chattery mind. I think.
Yeah. Well, the first thing is breath. Breath is
Okay.
such a beautiful tool.
Mm.
And the whole time that I'm playing, I'm usually very aware. I'm aware of my physicality. That's a beautiful thing about drumming is it brings me into my body. After all those years of trying to get out of my body, through meditation, through intellectualism, just trying to escape feeling, right? When I'm drumming, I have to be completely aware of my body and aware of where tension is rising. And so the breath is super helpful for me to be able to. I think that's where my stamina comes from. I start to feel tension in my shoulders, say, and I just breathe into my shoulder as I'm playing, and imagine myself bringing breath to that area, and it relaxes and allows the muscles to feel supple, rather than tense, which means that then I can play with power through the whole show,
Yeah,
because the shows are like 2 hours, right? And it's
that's a lot of effort.
yeah, it's a lot of effort. So to be effortless is really the point. And breath is a big help with that. And then also just continually falling into that center place, where I'm watching. the thoughts. I'm watching the body move. I'm watching the experience. But I am distant from it so that the music can really just kind of animate the body. Um, it's a funny thing. I think that this is a big dichotomy, isn't it? Because we're both stepping back and observing, but we're also feeling fully, right? And so that dichotomy is really interesting in these contemplative practices. How we can both be the witnesser and also be completely in it at the same time. Um, I'm not quite sure how to describe that feeling.
Yeah, it's like a
Yeah.
dual experience.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Wow, that's cool. Okay, so that prompts me with the question of you've talked about shamanism before. I know that you've studied applied shamanism. How does your shamanic practice connect with your music career?
hmm Well, I studied shamanism, applied shamanism. We called it applied shamanism because it's using traditional shamanic techniques in a kind of therapeutic setting, right?
Yeah.
And I studied in Berkeley, California, with a teacher named Isa Gucciardi. She has a school there called the Sacred Stream, and she's developed a counseling model called depth hypnosis, and it combines um, traditional, like Western therapeutic methods, mostly like uh, what's the word? Um, so it's like a counseling model, right? So we're
Yeah.
using Western, like counseling methods such as the active listening
Yes.
and questioning, things like that. And then we use Buddhism as a kind of framework, especially Tibetan Buddhism, because Tibetan Buddhism has a very strong shamanic history. It took on the Bun tradition. Buddhism is really beautiful that way. It kind of takes on aspects of each culture it kind of goes to, right? And when it arrived in Tibet, it took on the Bun tradition there, which is the shamanic tradition, which there's a lot of light and sound kind of in that shamanic tradition of Tibet. And then traditional shamanism. And she combines it all into this really beautiful model, depth hypnosis, and so I was trained in that and then trained in applied shamanism, which also teaches traditional shamanism. So I understand, I would say the difference in depth hypnosis and traditional shamanism is that in traditional shamanism, the shaman is doing the journey, right? The shaman is going to retrieve soul parts and power. Um, and in depth hypnosis, we're allowing the client to be their own shaman and doing their own journey, retrieving their own soul parts, with the help of the practitioner.
Yeah, right. That's
Um,
cool.
yeah, and it's very, I think that it really creates a balance of power. I think
Yeah.
a lot of the problems in modern shamanism is a misunderstanding of power, where one person has all of the power and they're the ones who are kind of healing and doing all of these things. But I really connect to this model where the shaman is empowering the client to be their own healer.
Mm.
So, and when I walked into my the first time that I went to a shamanic journey class to learn the shamanic journey, and the drum came out, I thought, like, all of these light bulbs went on in my head, like, oh yeah, this is gonna make a lot of sense to me. Yeah, and the fact that the drum is what creates the altered state in the counseling model, it seemed like I had been coming to this for a long time.
Yeah, well, I mean, drumming itself is a psychic driver and does put people into altered states of consciousness. Do you take that shamanic sort of drumming practice into your work on stage as well?
I
You,
don't. Yeah, I don't.
oh,
I feel
really?
like, yeah, I feel like for me the frame drum is really for healing. And it's not I can't imagine. I mean, I know that there are people who play the drum on stage, but for me, it's really about interpersonal, kind of connection.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, what if your band actually was a healing band at the same time?
Well, I mean, I think that it actually, not to get too goofy about it, but Led Zeppelin's music is really the music of people's, some of the most important moments in people's lives.
For
People tell
sure.
me that, their baby was born to a Led Zeppelin song or they got married. Somebody recently came and said that their father was in hospice and was in the process of transitioning, and he really wanted to come to the show and couldn't. And so she was holding the video up for him, and it was giving him a lot of solace, the
That's
music.
cool.
So all music has the potential for that, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Music has anchors in time and experience, and it's important to be able to go back to those times sometimes, just to help relive them, or to release energies, or to even just enjoy the moment again.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
right. Right.
yeah.
Yeah.
Is there a goal to your spiritual practice, and how does that also connect with your musical goals?
Recently I started to feel like I said, I was investigating that forward pushing motion
Yeah.
in my life. And one day I had the thought that I think maybe I had lost all ambition, which, when I said that out loud to my friends, it was kind of like this, like I'd said a dirty word or something. I mean, in our society, ambition is what we all strive for, and which we feel fuels us.
Mm,
And is that forward propulsion in our life. And if we don't have goals, then what are we? We're lazy, or we've given up, all of these things. And like I said, it kind of felt like when I realized I didn't have that energy in me anymore, I felt maybe like the ground had fallen out from underneath me, is kind of my experience. But I spoke to a teacher, a spiritual teacher that I have, and he said, it's not that the it's not that you have no ambition, it's just that the goalposts have changed.
that's a nice way to
And
put it.
yeah, and I thought that was really beautiful. Like I was always going, I'm somebody, I'm an Aries, right? So I always had to be the first one. The first one, like, I mean, my whole
You're at the
life, like
front.
that's just me. I'm at the front of the line. And I realized lately, like, where am I trying to go so fast? There's really only one ending here. And like, do I really want to get there as fast as I can? So yeah, so as far as goals go, I mean, the biggest goal I would say is just to be completely undefended, to be of service to all I meet, to be of to transmit some kind of light to all that I see without judgment, without feeling that I know the best way for anything. Yeah, so I guess if I could think of any kind of goal, it would just be to continue to open my heart, I guess, would be the
Mm.
only way to say it. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
continuous opening of the heart towards greater understanding of self.
Yeah.
Nice. Okay, so how do you deal with self judgment and the judgment of the listener, viewer, and audience? I mean, the meditation seems to be leveling that out for you. Is that right?
Yeah, well, I think that that internal negative voice that you were talking about, that internal self-judgment, I think that that really was, was really my big point of suffering in my life. One day I realized that I had the most negative voice continually in my head,
Mm,
and my trying to figure out how to deal with that, how to let it go, what it was all about, did begin my contemplative practice. What is that voice? Why do I hate myself? What is this ocean of shame that I
yeah,
open to when I sit in meditation? What
yeah,
did I ever do to feel like I was so bad, like just bad? Um, so that's been a lifetime of trying to understand that. And and in that coming to a lot of self-compassion techniques and opening that up, and when I really was diving into that, I started to think, in a way it's kind of a gift to have this, because nobody can ever say anything to me worse than what I've said to myself, than I've anticipated other people saying to me. I have, nobody can make me feel as bad as I make myself feel about who I am and what I am. Um,
yeah.
and I actually I wrote about this in my book. We have a video online that has, quite a few views, and I had never ever looked at any of the comments to the video. And one day when I was really thinking about this, I thought, well, that would be a great test, wouldn't it? Because now I feel so like nobody can hurt me in this way. And I thought, well, how about if you go on to that video and you look at one of the 20,000 comments, right? And see, if you can handle it.
Yeah.
And the thing I realized after looking through like 400 of them was that 95% of what people were saying were so kind
Oh, that's
and so
beautiful.
positive, and that I had been robbing myself of feeling that somehow in my mind I had told myself that humanity, if given the choice, would be cruel. And I really realized my that was a big misconception. And
Yeah.
it went back to being bullied in school and all of that stuff. You get this idea that, and that lens of seeing humanity in this negative way. I realized that about myself. I didn't like that.
Mm,
And then I realized that the things that people did say, the negative things they did say, I thought, well, if they're calling me, if they say that I'm fat, well, I've been telling myself that since I was, 13 years old. It fueled eating disorders. It fueled everything. Like there's nothing you can say about my body I haven't said worse, and that's still a thing that I'm constantly dealing with. So it's like nobody can really hurt me in that, because I've suffered so much that at this point it's just like, God, who cares? Who really cares
yeah.
what you say?
Yeah.
So yeah, these practices have been just instrumental in me being able to feel free to just express myself, um, and 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 also to come to the realization that, if I walk down the street, I can get along with 98% of people that I speak to. I really do love humans.
Yeah.
My husband is a lot more crotchety, and he's like, "You're completely wrong," and I'm like, "No, humans are wonderful."
He's balancing you out.
He is. We all need that, right?
Yeah,
I
for
don't,
sure, for
so I
sure.
don't float away. Yeah.
Yeah, I can understand how you possibly you would have come to that conclusion that maybe humanity is quite awful. But then realizing that it isn't. I mean, you look at how our minds are being colonialized with the idea that Darwinism exists and we all fight tooth and nail to get to the top, and that's possibly a part of our drive, and that's probably why you can look back on your drive and go, "Oh, I don't really need that," because it's not even a story that we actually really need. And then that lumped along with materialism, it does give you a bit of a dark view on humanity when in reality it's not like that. We all actually are suffering in that same sort of consciousness at the same time and thinking we're living it and being in it alone.
Yeah, yeah.
But
I mean, when I think about Darwin and, I tried to read The Origin of Species, and I think I couldn't really follow it. But I have read that, Darwin talks, the word love appears, many more times in that. And that I think that his ultimate conclusion, from what I understand, was that it really is our ability to get along with each other that forwards the species, and that our base instinct is nurturing. The first thing we experience is care and nurturing. um, and we might want to move forward and be the best, but it doesn't necessarily mean that it has to be at the expense of other people.
well, that does speak to the idea that maybe over time that's been distilled into another story that serves the control mechanisms of our mind and our world. And
Mm-hmm.
yeah,
Yeah, that's right.
or
And these are all lenses that we get to change.
yeah, for sure.
We can change them in any moment if we decide. I remember when I was a waitress and I would go into the restaurant in the morning and I would be in a bad mood. And I could see that I was kind of choosing to be in a bad mood, and I was just going to be in a bad mood all day for whatever reason. And, all day long stuff would happen and I just get madder and madder and just grumpier and grumpier. And if I got into the restaurant and I felt myself in a bad mood and I was like, you know what, just let it go and just put a smile on your face, even if you're not feeling it, and walk through the world, magical things would happen to me. People would be so kind, like great things would happen. By the end of the day, I would be happy. It's a choice we make. It's a choice. Yeah,
Yeah, we can make that choice in every single moment.
that's right. That's
Yeah,
right. Yeah.
yeah, and the resilience of I think meditation, even in just a mindfulness practice, assists in making better choices for sure.
It does. And I think that, for, people like you and I who have done this kind of work, kind of think it's our job to have the lens of, positivity in a lot of ways, because,
Yeah.
I always think and I tell this to my grumpy husband, like if I lose that positivity, then we're sunk, because I've had every benefit in my life. I've had parents who loved me and a good education and good health. And if I can't get it together to see the world in a positive way, then nobody could, and then it's not good. Yeah. It's
Mm.
my job to be Miss Mary Sunshine. And I have to apologize to everybody that I know for that disposition.
It's good that you embrace it. It's good that you embrace it for sure. So, you've actually done some other work with energy medicine, sound healing, and morphic awakening techniques. What
Hmm.
is
Morphic
what are
awakening.
they? And also, what is? I
Yeah.
mean, morphic awakening's got my attention. Like, what does that mean?
Yeah, I've had a mentor since I was 22 years old. I met my dear friend Surya Dean, and she's been my mentor this time. And she's a wonderful spiritual teacher. And she developed it's a program that she developed, Morphic Awakening, and I can never do it justice. But what it is it really is tapping into the heart, into that healing space of the heart, to promote healing, to let go of the barriers that we find in our physical bodies, in our spiritual bodies, in our emotional bodies, and clearing that out. And she's really a master of it. And I'm always I bring the techniques into my other, spiritual work with other people without really talking too much about it, because I feel like I have a understanding of it that doesn't doesn't connect to my ability to explain it. Um,
So
and
you
I would,
live it, you live it beyond words.
that's right. So if you're interested, her Siriya, Sirriya, Dean, Din. And yeah, she's a profound healer.
Excellent.
And I'm so fortunate to have her in my life.
Well,
And then as far as the sound and energy healing, a lot of the energy healing I learned with Isa Gucciardi at the Sacred Stream. It's part of the shamanism program. And the sound healing, um, I feel like that I'm like kind of on the edge of this vast well of knowledge that is coming to me. It's one of those things I feel is going to develop more and more in my life. I already use it to some degree in my sessions with people, um, but um, but I have dreams being kind of shown about using sound as healing tools and stuff, and I feel like it's something that's coming to me.
yeah, right.
Uh,
Are you gathering all
mhm.
the tools now and
That's right.
getting into it?
Yeah, I
That's
know.
cool.
I know. Yeah, it's cool.
Have you done any sound healing baths for people yet?
I haven't done baths for them, but in the course of, a depth hypnosis session at the end, I'll kind of use the sound,
Yeah.
to be able to seal in the healing, or sometimes just be guided, by my
Yeah.
guides,
Nice.
to do certain, use my voice and the drum
Mhm.
and the bowl.
So when you work with people, do you work mostly one on one? Is that what's happening? Or,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and do
That's
you have any
right.
success stories with the people you've worked with that you could share without revealing their identities?
Gosh, this work is subtle. What we're doing is we're undoing patterns of we call them karmic patterns. Patterns that we've come here to unravel and to heal. And I recently I had a client who was just describing like, wow, I was in this interpersonal situation that before, she had a real problem with being too porous. She would take on other people's suffering, and it
Mm.
was starting to kind of appear in all of these physical manifestations in her body, like all of this
Yeah,
stuff she had
right.
been holding,
Mm.
as an empathic person. And she was, told me, man, I was in this, like, I got off the phone and immediately got a call about this thing, or this person was suffering, and I saw how I used to be respond to that by trying to take on her pain, and how it just I couldn't do that now. And that was really hopeful for me, for her life,
Mm.
that she had started to understand how to put up those boundaries that come when we're in our own power. There's a natural boundariness
Yeah.
um, that happens. Yeah,
Yeah, healthy boundaries are definitely something that we definitely must learn to use. Otherwise, you do actually take on other people's stuff, and yeah, it does seem like that a lot of empathic people are almost like latent shamans, because a lot of shamans actually do that. They take it on and then they transmute it for the people, But
that's
pe-
right.
empaths usually don't. They're like, oh, I'll just take it on. So
We'll just take it on.
yeah,
Yeah, that was such a big misunderstanding for me for so many years, and I
yeah,
have spent so many sessions letting go of so much junk that is not mine.
yeah,
That because I've just spent, a lifetime of thinking. When I was a kid, I used to kind of, if somebody was sick, I would try to like breathe their sickness into me, so that because I knew I could handle it, that I was strong enough to handle it, in order to help them. And later I realized it was a misguided Buddhist practice called Tonglen, which is where we breathe in suffering and then we breathe out light. But I was kind of doing the wrong thing, which was to breathe in suffering and to hold on to it, right?
Yeah.
And yeah, that's was a big misunderstanding that I've been, healing from, paying for several years now.
Yeah, I think we all do that in a different sort of way, definitely for sure.
We
Yeah.
do. We do.
Yeah. So you've written a book that you mentioned at the start, From Bonham to Buddha and Back, The Slow Enlightenment of the Hard Rock Drummer. Can you tell us all around this book? Because you released it last year and people should know about it.
Yeah, thank you. Let's see. Well, the title From Bonham to Buddha and Back. Bonham is John Bonham, of course, the drummer for Led Zeppelin. I've played his music now for 20 years. And, he was, when I started playing drums, I realized how much he had influenced my listening and my love of drumming. And just being able to get inside of his drumming inside of his body basically for the last 20 years has been really just a wonderful experience. And he represents the drumming, my music career at this point. And Buddha represents the contemplative practice. And the book is really a way of using my music career as a metaphor for spiritual practice. And I started off writing, I'd come home after a weekend of shows and I would write about, the difficulties that had experienced that weekend, um, and how my contemplative practice had helped me. For instance, if I play at altitude, we play in Colorado at, say 9,000 feet, and I have to, the body struggles to be athletic at that, at altitude, and certain things happen to me as I'm playing drums. And because of the physical struggle, my mind starts to struggle. And so I wrote about how my contemplative practice really helped me through that kind of struggle, right? So, in writing about those things, I started to really see that how, my whole life was one thing. The drumming and the spiritual practice, it was just kind of my life, and the lessons that I was learning. Um, Both on the mat and in my music career were all kind of the same, bringing me to this open-hearted place. So the book is about that. There's, it's a memoir, so it kind of talks about how I came to decide to be a rock and roll drummer at 27 years old, which is late for people. And it's a bit of a love story to my father. He was a really big music lover, kind of started me on my path of loving music. And, he never got to see me play. He died before I was really a drummer. So there's that aspect of it. And, it really is a love story to drums. I think drums, they're the first instrument, the first, like kind of sacred sound that we heard when we were, 80,000 years ago. So it's mimics the heartbeat of the planet and the heartbeat of ourselves. And I just think drums are magic. So there's a lot of that in there too.
Very nice. Where do people find your book?
Mm. You can find it on Amazon.
Yeah.
I read it as an audiobook on Audible. And then, my website is clemthegreat.com, and that has every aspect of me, links to every aspect of my life there.
Excellent, excellent. Is there any parting message that you'd like to give the listeners about meditation and life that you think might go with them?
Hmm. Well, I just like once a day to kind of stop and think, what if everything is okay right now? What if I am okay right now? What if I don't need to be different than I am? What if this is okay right here? And that striving, that feeling of not being good enough, not being worthy, all of those things are just stories told. And right here, right now is perfect for us. Um, I think maybe that would be something I'd like to say to everybody.
Excellent. Excellent. Thank you so much for your time, Clementine, and your stories and understanding of meditation and life. It's been beautiful. Thank you.
Thank you so much, CJ.
All
Thank
right.
you.
I'll say goodbye to the listeners. Again, it was a great pleasure talking to Clementine today and her understanding of meditation and how that can actually assist with being in the moment. And if you've enjoyed today's show, please like the show and share it to a friend that you think will enjoy it. And if you like, come back again next week, or actually next show. I'm doing 2 a week right now. And please, yeah, give us 5 stars. And if you're on YouTube, like and subscribe, as people say. All right. Thank you very much for your time. And thanks for listening. And bye for now.